Hello, welcome to the Trews. We're just analysing some of the madness that went on last week. It's weird when people resign from frontline politics, it's like they've unplugged themselves from the Matrix and their humanity comes flooding back. Look at some of these resignations.
Thank you for your kindness, friends.
Also, try and ignore the fact that I'm clearly in an RV sat behind a steering wheel. Don't worry about that.
First of all, thank you to the British people. Thank you to the people who met me on train stations, in colleges, in workplaces, in schools.
Sounds like a drug deal. Thank you to the people who met me on train stations. That was a bloody good price for an eighth. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your stories with me. I've learnt so much from you.
Thank you, Russell Brand, for fucking up the election by getting me to come round your house.
Thank you for the selfies. Thank you for the support. And thank you for the most unlikely cult of the 21st century, Millie fandom.
Oh, he looks genuinely sort of relieved. It's not fair. I think it's this really unpleasant world where it's accepted that it's kind of a facsimile of reality, not reality itself. A simulacrum, if you will, my new favourite word. So that when once again Ed Miliband's authentic, it's like a tremendous sort of relief to see someone unburdened from the layers of artifice required to pose as a person in power. That you have to do, like when they were saying stuff like we would never do a deal with the SNP, we would never do a deal with the SNP. You know that they would do a deal with the SNP, but they're not allowed to say that they'd do a deal with the SNP. The whole thing becomes about artifice and nonsense.
Second, I want to address those who voted Labour yesterday.
Thank you, and thank you. That's done.
Today you will feel disappointed, even bleak. But while we may have lost the election, the argument of our campaign will not go away. The issue of our unequal country will not go away.
I mean, if you took that issue on Ed first, then perhaps you'd have been bloody electable. It seems like the SNP had the success they did because they had an identifiable story. They said, like, we stand for Scotland, we stand for anti-austerity, we stand for genuine change. And it seems in retrospect, I mean, Tony Blair is saying, like, you know, Labour needs to go back to its old New Labour ways, its old new ways. But that is so revealing because it shows you that actually all that matters is winning. Elections are just the World Cup of politics. It's a really sort of, for me, I think, and for a lot of people, an odd, dispiriting revelation of the spectacle of an election, the spectacle of choice, not the reality of a choice. And what we see when they resign in this manner is the revelation of their true self, and we reconnect with them because up until then, they're like these sort of phantoms spouting nonsense, so you can't really contact them.
The Liberal Democrats are a family.
Nick Clegg's interesting because I've met him also, and he feels like a sort of like, I don't know, sort of like some nice deputy headmaster or some sort of friend's dad that's actually quite a nice chap. And I think that this really is like the orgasm of the latent grief that he's been feeling for half a decade.
It is simply heartbreaking to see so many friends and colleagues who have served their constituents so diligently over so many years abruptly lose their seats because of forces entirely beyond their control.
Forces entirely beyond their control. I don't know whether that's incredibly revealing or just sort of nonsense. If, like, the whole thing is beyond your control, if there is nothing you can do when you are in government, if promises you make, pledges you make have no resultant impact, then yeah, then those forces are beyond your control. I read a book the other day that said that all that any politician can ever say is, I'll do my best. That's it. Any promise beyond "I'll do my best" is meaningless because they can't tell you what they're going to encounter. They can't tell you what's the sort of the administrative tangle they're entering into. And like we said before, what this election revealed to me is the power of the establishment. This murky, indetectable, invisible force that's everywhere. We only see when the craters erupt through the Daily Mail or through the Sun or through the kettling at some riot. But that's there all the time. The establishment is this omnipotent thing, preserving the status quo.
It is, of course, too early to give a considered account of why we have suffered the catastrophic losses we have, and the party will have to reflect on these in the time ahead.
So the slow humanisation of Nick Clegg even involves sort of like coughing. Oh, excuse me, sorry about that. Oh, forgive me. Oh, what's the point?
Liberalism here, as well as across Europe, is not faring well against the politics of fear. Years of remorseless economic and social hardship following the crash in 2008 and the grinding insecurities of globalisation have led people to reach for new certainties. The politics of identity, of nationalism, of us versus them is now on the rise.
Again, it's like a man who's cracked out of a shell of apparent authority. I mean, he could have been saying the whole time he's in government, this is bollocks, we're not doing anything, this is mental, every time I try and get something done, I can't. I would have loved to have done the tuition fees thing, but we had to for this deal. I'm really trying my best. Excuse me, I've got a sore throat. I'm pissed off at that posh geezer. But, like, really, you can't do it until it's meaningless. That's what it allows. The truth can only exist once it has no value or impact.
I hope that our leaders across the United Kingdom realise the disastrous consequences for our way of life and the integrity of the United Kingdom if they continue to appeal to grievance rather than generosity and fear rather than hope.
In a way, though, it's already done. It's already happened. It's retrospective. The failure of UKIP to win seats, for example, is meaningless if the UKIP become a kind of UKIP incorporative Conservative party. And what Nick Clegg's saying, while it's true, it's a fait accompli. These things have already occurred. Liberalism is already defeated. If to become a liberal in government you have to relinquish your liberalism, then what are you? Not a liberal.
Well, yes, there's a bit of me that's disappointed, but there's a bit of me this morning that's happier than I've felt for many, many years.
And then this man, whose apparent humanity was what helped him to sail through a campaign that was at least cinematic. The thing is about extremism is it makes better telly than liberalism or moderate views. It's interesting to see this fella over here, even now, still with the backdrop of the White Cliffs of Dover, with one of the literal agents out of the Matrix working for me.
I intend to take the summer off, enjoy myself a little bit, not do very much politics at all.
What photograph is that guy getting from behind Nigel Farage's head? Oh, I better get that. Back of Nigel Farage's head.
The government I led did important work. It laid the foundations for a better future, and now we must build on them.
This is when I realised, with a kind of yawning, dawning horror, the meaninglessness of the spectacle of politics, because everything David Cameron says, if it were true, would be incredible. He talks about looking after children, people working hard, becoming successful, making this country work for everyone that's in it, but we all accept that it's bollocks. We all just accept that a person will win an election, stand in front of number 10, talk a load of bollocks, and we don't go, hey mate, outside number 10 you said all this thing about like not stripping the country, and then in reality you're actually doing these things. We just go, yeah, no, he's a politician. We know that everything he says is not true. We don't expect truth. What do we expect? No, it really is. I think an election is more like a festival than any kind of democratic process. It's about the apparent expression of free will. It's about the apparition of power. Nothing actually is exerted. Nothing will change, nothing can change, and the result of, like, you know, the ones that lose express a sort of sudden bit of humanity, the glaze lifts from their eyes, and the winner continues with the facade. The winner has to maintain the illusion. Only the losers are free to once again communicate as human beings. For the victor, the illusion has to continue. Unfortunately, that is some true news. Subscribe here.
Is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the news. If the news was true, I want some Trews. Let's have some Trews.